The Florida Podcast Network, the voice of Florida.
From Mallory Square in Key West to the Governor's Mansion in Tallahassee and all points beyond, you're listening to the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com, your source for all things related to the craft beer community in the Sunshine State. And now your host, Dave Butler.
All right. Welcome to another episode and another year of the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com. This is Dave, your host and author. Happy 2024, everybody. I hope you are going to have an even better year this year than you did last year, because that would be totally 100% awesome. We've got some awesome episodes that we have coming up, some things that I've had recorded for quite some time, and we're finally going to get those out. We're going to be doing a little bit of traveling, and for this episode and the next episode, we are going to be heading up to North Florida, to Lake City, Florida, to be exact. And if you don't know where that is, if you take Interstate 95 all the way up to the intersection of Interstate 10, just below the Georgia border, kind of cut that intersection into quadrants, and I would say the southwest quadrant, that is Lake City, and that is the home to Halpatter Brewing. You might have heard them. They are starting to get quite a reputation for some amazing beers, and their distribution is starting to grow quite a bit, so I think you're going to start seeing the name a lot more. I have been there before, long before the podcast started, and I had a fantastic chat and kind of tour with one of their owners and founders and partners, Chris Candler. I knew that I had to get there eventually. It is a bit of a drive from where I am, but things happened, and on the trip to Gainesville that you heard on some of our earlier episodes at the end of 2023, producer Steve and I took that little bit of a drive, jumped up, and finally reconnected with both Chris Candler and his fellow owner / partner, Jeremy Gable. If you have ever been to Halpatter Brewing, it is absolutely gorgeous. When you see the building in downtown Lake City, you can definitely tell that it had a municipal background. And I think that it's been a couple different offices. I think it used to be a post office as well. There are two bars. There's an upstairs and a downstairs, but the main one that you kind of go to, sort of the picture entrance, is the upstairs portion. And behind the bar, they actually have a small ballroom / meeting room. And that's where the four of us sat and spoke. To say that this interview was slightly less formal than the other interviews that I've ever had on the podcast is sort of an understatement. It's just going to jump right in. We're just going to go for it. And you'll see, we will sit there and listen to part one of our interview with Steve and I and Chris Candler and Jeremy Gable, talking right about their ATF raid. Yes, ATF raid. So there we go. I'm just going to let you get it right into it. Enjoy. It's interesting that your name is getting out so far and wide. Is it because ATF raided your building 6 or 7 years ago?
Honestly, that's kind of the first. I mean, yeah, we spread the story.
With that story. We're going to start with that story.
We spread that story all over the place, but I didn't know that it had caught on statewide. I didn't know that it was that big a deal. But yeah, it's a fun story to tell.
St. Patrick's Day.
St. Patrick's Day, 2020.
Golly.
Okay, so what happened?
So yeah, we
did they wear little leprechaun costumes?
Yeah, they actually, their guns were green and they shot rainbows. Yeah. No, I was actually down by you guys. I was actually down in Jupiter because it was spring break, and I was down there spring break with my kids, and I got a call. I
actually had gone home for the night.
He had gone home for the night. We were all gone.
Yeah.
And the whole thing, DeSantis or the governor or whoever it was shut us down. And I was Holly. Holly called me and she's like, "Hey, have you seen the news?" And it was like 11 o'clock in the morning. And I'm sitting on the beach literally doing spring break with my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, you need to look at the news right now. And I'm like, what? And she's like, look at the news. And so we found out that we had been shut down. Well, by the time we were able to kind of do anything, figure it out, we had a tap room full of people because it was freaking St. Patrick's Day. So we said, well, you know what? We're gonna let St. Patrick's Day ride. And we did, and that was fine. It was the next day, it was March 18th. We finally kind of figured it all out, and they said bars are closed. You can't serve alcohol on premises. So we actually shut off all of our taps, turned off all the taps, and we have a full restaurant license.
Well, that was the other thing too, was because I don't think anyone was really clear. They made it very clear about who was a restaurant, who was a bar after a while. Right up front, it was not. So, but we were operating as a restaurant on the 18th. There was not a drop of alcohol being poured. All the plugs were in our taps. We were serving sweet tea, whatever, at tea, and you could come in and get dinner. And again, I think we had a pretty decent little crowd on the 18th just ordering food. And we had all gone home, and can't remember what time it was. It's been a long time ago now, but 7 armed, bulletproof vests. I don't think they were wearing flak helmets and that kind of thing, but they bulletproof vests and guns. Yeah, and apparently they went up the stairs in formation.
Yeah, came up the stairs in formation, walked into the brewery, and forcibly shut us down and forced all of the patrons out.
Yep.
And then stood there and waited for the bartenders to count down their tips and the drawers and everything, and then and stood there until they locked the doors behind them. Now, I will say, I mean, understandably, I guess you would say, or...
Well, I was going to say, what was the cause of that?
You're going to make me say it? We had a local official that actually turned us in and had called ATF on us and said that, I don't think they should be open. So one of our local officials here actually called them and sent them over here when we were operating under the full rule of law. I mean, we were, and I think this is my favorite part of the story, being the guy that had the veins standing out in his temples and turned all red and was yelling at the officials over in Jacksonville, because that's where our local office is. I got just about as close to an apology as you're ever going to get. They said, we didn't know, and we're sorry. You guys were right. You should have been open. And so... If nobody's aware, our Punch-Out series is our way of our Punch-Out beer series is our way of taking jabs at people
That's a good way to put it.
that have given a shit. Let's just put it that way. And that local official is now on a Punch-Out label. So,
yeah, there's all sorts of little hidden messages on these labels that kind of point to those people specifically, but
yeah.
So it's not just beer at Halpatter Brewing, but petty revenge as well.
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
For sure.
No, actually, we have more than one series of beer where the labels are
Very
straight
petty.
up petty revenge.
Very petty.
Actually, there are 3 series that I can think of right off the top of my head where we're straight up making fun of people.
Oh, that's amazing. Obviously, you've been around long enough to make all of these beers. So let's head all the way back to the beginning, because before there was a brewery, before any of us were born, the building, we have to talk about the building because it is this glorious monument of
beer.
I was going to say North Florida municipal faux grandeur.
Accurate, yes.
And
Yes.
If you've never seen the building, you need to take a look. There is a grand staircase right up the front leading to what looks like a 1940s elementary school.
Yeah.
I'm sure that if you've seen something like Back to the Future, you can imagine the light red brick sort of.
Yeah.
You've got this in your mind. But this building's been through a lot before it became a brewery.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. Construction started in 1939. 40, it was completed as the district headquarters of the Department of Transportation. Mm-hmm. So you are exactly correct. It has always been a monument to government, and 10,000 square feet. That's something that a lot of people don't, I think, get about Halpatter, is that we're a full blown. We're not and nothing against small breweries at 100%, but 2 tap rooms and an event space and a lot of public space. It was City Hall for a little bit, and then it was the school board for several years. It was then turned into storage. It was being used for court storage, and this place was trashed. I would say it was slated for demolition.
Because I was going to say, basically right across the street is City Hall.
City Hall. And then all the county offices and courthouses are just a block and a half away.
So is Lake City the county seat?
Yes.
Gotcha.
And we actually are also what they call the hub or the center of the Swanee Valley region. We're the largest municipality in a 7-county region. So.
Gotcha. And I would assume the next largest municipality would be Jacksonville.
Gainesville would probably be the next largest. Okay. And what's fun about Lake City, too, is that we are equidistant between Tallahassee to the west, Gainesville to the south, Jacksonville to the east, and Valdosta, Georgia to the north.
Gotcha. I didn't realize we were that close to Valdosta.
Oh, no, you are literally probably a 20-minute drive from the Georgia border right now.
Yeah, because if you've never seen where Lake City is, basically you go up 75 and you're at the lower left-hand corner of the intersection between 75 and 10.
Yeah, I think it's marketed as the heart of Florida, or
we're the gateway city.
Gateway city.
The heart, but yeah, the gateway definitely.
Yeah, but we're not quite the armpit either. So
yeah, we're in.
You've turned the building into gorgeous event space. You've turned it into great outdoor space. Awesome brewery, phenomenal kitchen. What else? What else can you do with it?
So you're where we're sitting right now. I know your listeners can't see right now, but the event space, the 100-seat event space that we're in right now is actually set for our second Sunday's brunch. We host a brunch buffet every second Sunday of the month where we'll bring in a room full of people. A classically trained chef does a kick-ass brunch, and we've hosted. I think the fun stories that we tell are we host baby showers and wedding receptions and all the way down to a Christian high school prom at a brewery. So
okay, so it was funny because you were going to mention that because the last time that we spoke, the last time that I was here, which mind you was pre-pandemic, it's been a little while. The room that we're in, which is behind the main upstairs bar, is a beautiful ballroom. I'll put the pictures up on social media. But you had said that for some reason, the high schoolers in the area would just come in just to do prom photos.
Yeah.
And now it's sort of come full circle, and now not just a high school, but a Christian high school.
Now I'm going to say
hosting a prom here.
I'm going to say we probably won't host a whole lot of proms ever again because we didn't make a ton of money, if you can imagine that. So, yeah, I don't know why.
I mean, no alcohol sales, yeah.
Right. Yeah, but
lots of soda though.
Yeah, lots of soda. No, I mean, but yeah, even my son, when he graduated high school, we hosted his graduation party back here. Yeah, so we do host. We have become. I guess the way that we like to put it, or the way I like to put it, is we've become Lake City's public house.
I was just going to say that because it almost feels like in some ways you're not necessarily a brewery that has a lot of public spaces, which you are. But I guess would it be fair to say that there are people in the community that consider you to be that public space that has a brewery in it?
100%.
Yeah.
In December, we're actually hosting a Florida League of Cities event where people from Jacksonville, where government officials from Jacksonville and St. Augustine and Gainesville and all over North Florida are actually going to be coming in here in this in this event space. They're renting the whole top floor for a Florida League of Cities event. So we've hosted gubernatorial candidates. We've hosted Senate retirement parties, and I mean we literally host a Rotary Club once a month. So it's that, and I'm sure you probably know, but the term pub actually is a shortened version of public house. So we are a true pub here.
Well, you're that city community gathering point that most breweries need to get back to being. And
Amen,
you do
brother.
have my favorite signage downstairs, the nuclear fallout shelter signage. I always look at it every time I walk past it and just like, yes, that's it. That is the brewery.
So obviously you're enjoying this now, but you had said as it was storage, this place was beautiful, but it was trashed.
Sure.
How did it not become storage, and how did it eventually come to fall into your hands for what I would assume would be a lengthy renovation to the building that we're in today. That is the kind of look
many
between,
laughs.
Yeah.
That is the laugh of two people looking at each other who do not want to take the first step going down this road, so they're trying to punt.
How long did that renovation take us? Honestly, it felt like years, but I don't think it was years.
No, I think it was about 12 months, and the thing was it was literally a sweat equity demolition.
Yeah.
The room you're sitting in is about 1,200 square feet.
This room, I would say, had the most demolition.
100%.
Anything here?
I wish that we were on camera here because you would never know. But this room was 8 offices, a conference room, a break room,
and a hallway.
That
went around the perimeter.
We literally pulled with a drop ceiling in it.
And the floors look so good.
Well, thank you. And, they were all glue down carpet. So
it was blue Berber carpet.
Yeah. I think the sweat equity demolition was probably close to a year. And then the actual renovation with all the new systems and all that kind of stuff took. Oh my gosh.
Man.
We were supposed to be. So you guys have all heard the old adage, twice as long and twice as expensive to get a brewery open. Yeah, we were supposed to be opened August 1st. That was the contractor's estimate to get the renovation done. We actually opened December 1st. So yeah, an additional 4 months, so twice as long and twice as much.
Well, actually, production too down there, the demo down there. I forgot about that. That was offices as well.
Oh yeah, no, this place was a mess.
And there was the asbestos abatement.
Yeah, we did have asbestos abatement,
and because all the floor was tile and it was all asbestos tile, and we had to have a team come in there and get that all out of there and cleaned up.
Looked like something from a science fiction movie.
Yeah, and you can still see that today down there. Yep. The little grids of all the tiles.
Yep.
And it's interesting to see a 2-story facility. But I will say something that Steve was mentioning are the floors, because it feels like it's that old school. You go into a building that's been around for a long time, preserved as a museum floor. Is this the floor that was there that you just got lucky and saved? Really?
These
are the original
floors, oak.
Yeah,
oak floors. Mm-hmm.
Original oak, 1940s. We were actually, when we pulled up the carpet. Actually, the glue down carpet actually worked to preserve the floors more than anything. And when we pulled it up and we started sanding, that's another fun story where we spent an entire day sanding like a 2 square foot area and said, nah, screw that. We're hiring somebody to do that.
Actually, Johnny and I, we drove over to a Tractor Supply and they weren't renting it at that one here in town. And then we had to drive out. I think it was like the closest next one was like 45 minutes out. And we found a floor sander, brought it back here, and we just started working on it. And I think that thing gummed up in
15 seconds.
15 seconds. I mean, how big is this room?
It's 1,200 square feet. It's 33 by 33.
Yeah,
roughly.
So you get done with like a tiny corner, and you're like, all right, what do you do with this now?
33 by 35, something like that. So it's big room.
That's amazing.
Well, and then we hired someone to come in and do it, but I think after the gumming up of the floor sander, I was kind of like, I don't think this is happening. This guy came in. Do you remember this?
He did the whole building.
And he was like, yeah, I'll get this done. And literally did the whole building. And I don't even know how he did it.
Well, I guess my question is, why did it have to be this building? Why couldn't you have chosen something that was easier or build something brand new on the outskirts of town? Why here?
So that leads into a whole set of stories that we probably don't have time for. But
choose 1 or 2 great ones.
So the big thing is that the way we put it to anybody that asks is that this building, this establishment was always going to be located in about an 8-block neighborhood. It was going to be in historic downtown Lake City. That was still, even 7 years later, there was only one place that this was going to work, and that was downtown Lake City. We're not a large enough community where we could have built an industrial facility off on the outskirts of town and been successful. We needed to make a splash. We needed to become that public house. That's what Lake City needed to really get behind us, and they have absolutely gotten behind us.
Well, and ever since we started this, I think one of the coolest comments someone ever said to me was that this place is the coolest thing in Lake City. And it's like, I think we kind of gave people something to do outside of just
the interstate.
The interstate, or like coming off the interstate just for restaurant break. Or
the building
break.
has a great shape to be the city icon. It really does. The staircase leading up to the front entrance, the big sign across the top that says Halpatter, like it's a phenomenal representation of Lake City and what you look forward to.
And this building needed to be preserved. It needed to be fixed. And what's very interesting is once it was offered to us to do it was a county-owned building. It was a government-owned building, and they did give us a kind of a sweetheart deal to come in here and get it. So that helped that we got a big building for dirt cheap. But it did give us the ability to create that icon, to create that anchor for downtown. And I will say, funny stories aside about government officials turning us into the ATF and all that kind of stuff, or the ABT.
What was Lake City like to work with?
We get that question a lot from
other brewers,
from breweries and planning. A lot of times we've worked with or talked with a lot of other breweries and planning that are like, oh, okay, so what do I need to get ready for when it comes to the city? And I said, and really honestly, it's no comment, because they have been the community, the county, and the city have been 100% behind us from the very beginning. We had no issues.
I was gonna say, if the city wasn't on your side, you wouldn't get this building.
Right. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. And they just, anytime we needed something, they were very behind this project. And I think you're starting to see that in smaller communities. They know that breweries can anchor growth.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny that you mentioned that. Several years ago on the Florida Beer podcast, I don't know if anything happened with it, but the city of Tavares put out an RFP for a brewery,
right,
and gave them like a beautiful, beautiful deal, something like none of the taxes are required to start up as long as you got accepted. I don't know if anything happened with that. I'm hoping that it did, but it's interesting to mention that. And it's one thing I'd like to talk about is the positive aspect that a brewery, not a bar, a brewery usually brings to a small location, and how it sort of acts as, I guess, the artificial reef to encourage further growth.
Sure. I mean, it's hard sometimes to kind of toot your own horn. You don't want to, because some of it can be coincidental. But when we moved into this neighborhood, or when we opened in 2017, there was one restaurant of note downtown, still open. We now have a cupcake shop, an axe throwing place, a couple barber shops. We've got a coffee shop. The downtown has seemed to have sprung up around us. Mm-hmm. Now, is that coincidental? Oh, I don't know. Maybe not though. We have brought still one of my favorite things to do, even now that we've been here forever, is to go out on a Friday night and stand out on the deck outside and watch the cars fill into downtown, the parking lots that used to sit, I'm not kidding, freaking empty. And you will have people tell you that. Yeah. This place was a ghost town on Friday nights.
Well, and at one point, this whole downtown area, apparently, from what I understand, 'cause I'm not from this area, but people said that there was a lot of like festivals that would happen down here, and some parades, and there's a lot of activity in the downtown area. And that they've reflected on it and said, it's nice to see this again. Nice to see all this activity happening again down here. And yeah, I don't know. It's kind of cool. It feels like we definitely had maybe a little bit.
You get your areas like Tampa, St. Pete, Fort Lauderdale, Miami. We have handfuls of breweries in a 3-mile radius, 4-mile radius. Up here, you get Lake City's got one. High Springs has one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The North Florida
City just got the one now.
Right.
Like they're starting to pop up because they know breweries bring community. They bring meeting spaces. They bring areas where you can hang out with the kids.
Mm-hmm.
We've actually been contacted by 3 other cities to put second locations. Hey, are you guys ready to do a second location? And they're calling us. We need a brewery in downtown. Are you guys ready to open a second location?
So what's the answer to that?
Not yet. We have now. There's been a couple that we have thought really long and hard about it, but I guess you would say shore up your local first. We've got some things that we're working on. We're into package distribution, 100% package distribution. We're starting to work on our second brand now, going out into stores. So yeah, let's shore this up here. Make sure that we're doing what we set out to do as a just pre-pandemic brewery. Everything that we plan to do in year 3 is to kind of move to year 5. So yeah, we're following that plan. Second locations. The other thing too is we asked ourselves that question a while ago, because we actually were approached for a second location pre-pandemic. Glad we didn't do it. Glad we. I mean, like right pre-pandemic, we would have been opening about that time. So you kind of mentioned the other breweries need to kind of hone in on that public house thing. There's something that we have here. There is a vibe that we have generated. Part of it on purpose, part of it just doggone it worked out. And we have literally sat down and asked ourselves that question. If we open a second location, can we duplicate this? And that is very important to us. I'm not opening a second location. We've never been at this to just sell beer. We're here to sell an experience. And can you duplicate that experience in a second location? And we want to make sure that we can do that before we do it.
So there we go with part 1. Part 2 is going to be next week. And during this, the crowd at Halpatter Brewing is starting to grow quite a bit. They actually ended up having an event there that sort of popped up. So it was getting pretty crowded, which is great to see when you think about what Halpatter has done to Lake City. And we will be talking about that and talking finally about the name Halpatter, what, spoiler alert, who that was. If you want more information on when that episode's going to release, I do recommend that you follow us on social media. We are at Florida Beer Blog. If you're on Instagram, Threads, or what was known as Twitter, now X, and I don't know. We'll see. If you're on Facebook, that's FL Beer Blog. We are on the internet at floridabeerblog.com and floridabeerpodcast.com, or you can email us at floridabeerblog@gmail.com. If you get on to floridabeerpodcast.com, you will see that we are proud members of the Florida Podcast Network, a collection of great Florida-based, Florida-focused podcasts, and you can find more about them at floridapodcastnetwork.com. If you want, make sure to follow us on the podcasting app of your choice. We are on Apple Music. We are on Spotify. We are even on YouTube. And wherever you are, make sure to like, subscribe, and if you can leave us a review, that would be greatly appreciated, because that will give more people the impetus and the chance and the focus to find us and find Florida craft beer. Our intro announcer is Jeff Brozovich. Field producer that you heard on today's episode is Steve Pekala. Executive producer for the Florida Podcast Network and Grand High Poobah is Jemmy Legagneur. This is David Butler, your host and author. We will be back next week, back in Lake City for part 2 of Halpatter Brewing. In the meantime, drink Florida craft.